All right. Welcome to RJ Julia. This is the first author event of 2023. I hope you'll join us for many more events throughout the year. I'm Michael, event host with RJ Julia. We're lucky to be joined tonight by author Maureen Johnson in conversation with John B. Valeri in support of Maureen's new book, 9 Liars. After a brief intro, I promise, brief, we'll hear from Maureen. We'll have some time later for questions from the audience, and then we'll move to a book signing over near the front entrance afterward. So on Maureen's website, under a short bio, we find the following information. I write books. In longer bio, she says, I was an only child, which means that I know how to play Candyland by myself. I declared my intention to become a writer at the age of 8 or 9. I shall be a writer, I said, and I will develop no other skills to ensure I have no backup plan. From the fancy bio you can copy and paste into things, we get a little more information. Maureen Johnson is the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of several YA novels. Maureen has an MFA in writing from Columbia University. She's been nominated for an Edgar Award and the Andre Norton Award, and her books appear frequently on awards lists. Maureen lives in New York City. John B. Valeri is a book critic, author, and host of the web series Central Booking. He's written for Crime Reads, Criminal Element, Mystery Scene Magazine, the New York Journal of Books, Strand Magazine, and Suspense Magazine. Now we'll hear from John and Maureen.
There's a dog here.
There's a dog here. We should put the dog here.
You don't
And I can
understand.
move in.
I sound all happy that.
Who was responsible for it?
Oh, yeah, you're with your mom. Don't worry, we're not gonna look too
It's Maureen Johnson, that's not quiet. People took, ferries and boats and stuff to be
This
here.
is. Sorry, I was really hoping this. I was like, there won't be a dog here. And then I looked up. And my whole heart just swelled. Like if I see a dog, my whole day changes. It's like I've been given drugs. I'm like, I'm sorry, go on. I know, like I looked over and my whole brain just like was like dog, consumed with dog.
I think Oliver was a plan. Well done.
Oh, you're
well done.
Clover. We'll ask you some questions later.
Well, I'm not gonna say a lot because nobody wants to hear me speak. They want to hear you.
You want to hear Clover?
Clover, who I call Oliver. This one's spinning up. I will say, I love your books. And when I fell into them, it reminded me of why I fell into love with books in the first place. And that doesn't happen very often, especially when you get to be my old age. Like it's rare to have that experience. And in current times, I've sort of become a hermit. Like I don't get out much. And then they said, but Maureen Johnson. And I was like,
Oh,
Maureen Johnson. Like, yes, I have to leave my house.
I wouldn't stick with the lifestyle altogether too comfortably. I was, this seems about right.
It's kind of exhausting coming off of it though.
Oh, I.
Being social. I know, I resist my pants usually. I don't do that anymore. I'm giving me a sweater for Christmas and I was like, great. Like this is fitting of a serious thing and there are no buttons.
What's the saddest thing you'll ever hear? So this isn't the sad part. I did an event with Holly Black last week and her publicist was there. And her publicist said, I normally get all dressed up to go on planes, but I'm pregnant. So do you mind if I wear sweatpants? And nothing made me sadder than the thought of someone who felt like they had to get dressed up to go on there. She's like, I wear a suit and heels. Hey, why would you do that to yourself? You get on a plane, you're like, I will bring my most voluminous sweatpants. These 6 other people can fit me here. Me in the chocolate, baby.
Here, it's like that has been my constant state of dress.
They've got bigger.
And like if you zoom, like people see you from here, so nobody knows what's going on.
Exactly. I
down
want
there.
sweatpants that are just sweatpants. I want them to be like a sweatpants and an event space.
You have an event space, you have an event.
Welcome to.
Oh, I should probably ask you a little bit about that. There she goes. I can take
I
one.
can actually slide off. I won't, I promise.
But she can. And you know that. It's a talent. Mine would just be collapsing right here in front of everybody. I'm not. I wouldn't even claim to be.
All right, let's be serious.
Okay. It's not serious. All right. So, Nine Liars, it's a new book. How many people have read it? We're not going to spoil it, but just out of curiosity. Okay, that's not bad because it just came out recently. But it is a departure. Like literally, this book is a departure because Stevie and the gang, they go to London. You know, ostensibly it's for studies, but really it's to see Stevie's boyfriend. And when they arrive, you know, he introduces her to a friend who presents, of course, a cold case. So not only does she get to travel, but she gets a mystery. So I'm wondering if you can tell us about the 9 that she becomes acquainted with. Who are these people? And what is the tragic event that sort of binds them, but also threatens to break them apart?
So Stevie goes over to England and, as you well presented, she meets this friend of her boyfriend David, who says, my aunt was at a murder one. Saw a murder. And, or she thinks it was a murder, you know, but. And what happened was in 1995, a group called the 9, and they were 9 recent graduates from Cambridge University, and they were all part of a comedy theater group because Cambridge is famous for basically just pumping out comedians. A lot of very famous comedians have come out of Cambridge University. They have a thing called Footlights, which is like possibly outside of the groundlings, or maybe Chicago's second city, the biggest machine for producing comedians. So there's a lot of comedians that come out of there. They had a group, there were 9 of them. They couldn't think of a name and they got drunk one night, like, we just call ourselves the 9. So they were called the 9. And as they graduate from Cambridge, they decide to just have one kind of final blowout together. They all, when they're in Cambridge, they all live together in a house, student housing. But one of them is from a fancy family, and he has a fancy country house called Merryweather, and his family's away. So he's like, we're gonna go to Merryweather, we're gonna have a rager for a week, drink all the champagne. And they go, and it's a thunderstorm, and they're drinking champagne, and they have a drunken game of hide and seek when they arrive in the dark. And 2 of them don't come back in. And they think, oh, they've gone for some private romantic time. Like, let's not disturb them. You know, they'll come back in the morning. And they don't come back in the morning. And they find them in the woodshed. And they have been murdered with an axe. And in the woodshed. So it's like, straight up in the woodshed with an axe, country house murder, because I wanted to. And the police are like, oh, this is clearly a burglary gone wrong. They thought the house was unoccupied. They broke into the woodshed to look for something, and they surprised these people, and that's how they died. And it's always been thought it was a burglary, but this girl says to Stevie, like, my aunt is like, no, it wasn't. She saw something that wasn't right, and she doesn't think it was a burglary. You know, Stevie, a lot of people have been coming to Stevie saying, hey, I have a case, but they're always kind of like weirdos from the internet. That's like, I believe my neighbors are killing people in a giant tumble dryer. And she's like, oh God, I'm just being pursued by weirdos. But this turns out to be real. And thus begins the case of the 9 liars and what happened in Merryweather in 1995.
There you go. Who wouldn't want to read that?
Axe.
I feel like I'm usually that weird person on the internet who's like, have you heard about this? And I think it's something deeper and more.
My neighbors are killing people in a giant tumble dryer.
Deeper.
Yes.
Did I send that email to you?
The chunk, the chunk, the chunk. That's the sound it makes.
Everyone?
The
Every
chunk,
night.
the chunk.
The chunk.
That's the sound of somebody going around the tumble dryer. The chunk.
It is.
It's also the.
And now you know, if you hear that sound, worry
The chunk.
slightly.
Yeah.
All right, so I have to ask you about the Manor House because I know
Yes.
for a very long time you wanted to write a Manor House mystery. I mean, like, you know, it's real when you get like a map of the
Yeah.
property in the book, like that's serious.
Okay.
So tell us about your influences because I know the Manor House, you love Sherlock Holmes, you love Poirot, and you
Yeah.
finally get to work all of those things into a book. So tell us a bit about your, influences with it and how you're finally able to draw on them for this particular book.
So in all of the Stevie books, there's a map. I draw the maps. Well, I draw something. And then an actual artist looks at these, they get these drawings and they go, oh, did a child do these? And they're like, oh, the author did these. And you're like, oh. Above the age of 5. Aw. So I spent, there's always a clue in the maps. There's always information in the maps. In all the Truly Devious maps, the maps of Elm Academy, some of the Boxwoods, but there's always a piece of information. They're not just there for decoration. And I spent a ridiculously long period of time drawing the plans for both the house and the garden. So that everything, I mean, it looked like I downloaded architectural software at one point. So I was like, I was trying to draw it. I was like, oh, I know it'll do that'll save time. I'll download architectural software and I'll design it in that. Do not download architectural software unless you actually plan on learning to be an architect or use architectural software. I spent so much time trying to teach myself the software, but I spent a lot of time studying the layouts of houses, and for the grounds, the house I actually didn't exactly base the ground on, but kind of riffed on was a house called Hidcote, which is what turns out my brother and sister-in-law live near. So one of the last times I visited them, my sister-in-law very kindly said, oh, I'll drive you to Hidcote. So I'd already been working on this, and then she drove me over to Hidcote, and we got to walk around and look at the grounds, which are extensive, but there are clues in all these. And I spent a lot of time drawing, checking every single one of these little windows and doors. So if anything is wrong in here, I will have to go run out into the road. Because I spent so long checking all of the vent, like checking every single vent, what you could see from where and everything. So, you know, did it make sense where these are the things you think about if you're me. But yes, there's a map in there. So I could watch it, study it.
So it took longer to make the map than write the book, probably.
It took a surprising amount of time to make the map, and it took a lot of time.
So let me ask you, so Stevie, you know,
Yes.
she, as we probably all know, struggles with anxiety, and there's a lot going on in this book. Not only, you know, is she up against a case that she actually feels like maybe this is the one that she finally cannot solve, but she's also on the I'm not even gonna say that. She's on the brink.
Yeah.
You know, I can speak occasionally, but she's on the brink of some really major personal life decisions, and all of that plays into sort of her emotional state of being. So can you talk about that and how those things play in the tension in this book?
Well, she's on a clock with this because the visit is only 10 days. And she has a lot of personal and emotional stuff to work through with David in that amount of time. And you know what it's like when you build something up and up and up, like, because you're only going to see your significant other for this very short period of time. And you have to do all of your feelings, everything at once, and then you're done. And you don't think about what happens when you're done. You only think about the lead up to it. And so with each passing day, she's losing time. Like, she's made it there, she's seen David, but now she's on the clock and she's going to have to leave. And this case has come up, and she only has so much time to solve it before she's physically put on a plane and sent home. And also, she's not supposed to be running around and trying to solve it, because the head of her school is well aware of her proclivity for doing these sort of things and says, if you're not where you're supposed to be, I will come there personally and kill you myself. So she has to kind of sneak around a little bit. But the romance plot in this was, I got the help of Holly Black, who is the queen of helping you plot things and sitting down with you and grabbing you and saying, you must sit and think about your romance plot. So this was, I remember very fondly sitting around a fire outside one summer night and her going, tell me about your romance plot. For some reason, Holly speaks like that. But I don't want to give away too much, but the adventures of Stevie and her attempts to do something that are constantly thwarted in this book. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, you know, actually, can you talk a bit about, you know, the difference in writing these standalone books versus the original trilogy? You know, because you have to resolve the mystery in these books, but you do want other things to carry over from book to book. So, you know, the suspense brings us back time after time. So can you talk about your approach to that, making sure you give a satisfying conclusion, but also something that's going to draw readers back for the next book and then one after that?
When I set out to write Truly Devious, I wanted to create a detective that would carry through to other stories. So Truly Devious was the big old origin story, and then every other book is a continuation, but the idea is you'd be able to read them separately. And there is precedent for this and not. Like in most detective stories, you can pick up in any order. That's how they're designed. There's only one I can think of, but I'm sure there are plenty of other more modern ones. Like a classic one that has a kind of romance that goes throughout, which is Lord Peter Wimsey and Harriet Vane. And I read those out of order when I first read them. So I didn't kind of know when I jumped in the middle that Harriet Vane and Lord Peter Wimsey were like an on again, off again. Or I think I probably jumped in when they got married or something like that. So the mystery is solved. Like you get the whole mystery, but the personal stuff is a little bit on a continuum. And I think that where this story opens, you get the basic understanding. They're a couple, he's in England, she's in America, she wants to see him. And it's basically that simple. I don't think you have to know it, but I try to make it so you don't have to know a whole lot. Like you get the basics of the situation.
Sure. So I will admit, the first book I read was The Box in the Woods,
Uh-huh.
which was the first standalone after the trilogy. And I mean, I read that book and I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've read in, I don't know, 20, 30 years. Yes, I am not old. Of course, I went back and I read them back to back to back, which I never do because like you, I always have deadlines and stuff and you just can't read 3 books back to back to back for pleasure. But I did for you. And when people said, why aren't you handing in your work? I just said Maureen Johnson. And they're like, oh, okay, I get it.
It's the same reason I do.
Feel free to try that. But I have to say, one of the things I particularly love about this series is the characters you've created. It's a really wonderful ensemble, and it's very inclusive in sort of an organic and natural way. You have Stevie, but then you have, Janelle, who's Black, and you have Vi, and they're non-binary, and you have a sort of a rebel in David, and there's, a revelation about Nate in this book that I'm not going to reveal. That's half the fun of reading these things. But can you talk about, how conscious you are when creating these characters so that readers can find somebody to relate to in these books? Because there really is a character for everybody, I think.
I did an interview last night with a podcaster. My publicist said there are 2 12-year-olds and they have started a podcast and they would like you to go on their podcast. I was like, I'm in. Yes. How can I? So I was doing all this other stuff, but I sat down it was on like 6 o'clock at this podcast. And these 2 12-year-olds show up, super professional, incredible questions, knew how Zoom worked, recorded everything, but they give this whole speech and they're like, and we're really just, thank you for including non-binary characters because a lot of authors don't do that. Our friend from school is non-binary and we told them about it and it made them really happy. And I was like, these 12-year-olds understand the concept of non-binary people just existing better than most of the UK and US media. But like they really did. To be honest, I don't think about it that much because it's just natural. Like it's not hard and it's not confused. It's not like, it's just normal. They just reflect people. So no, I don't think of it as taking a lot of time or effort or particularly, it's just, they reflect, especially the kids that read, that talk back to authors about books. Like I'm writing what I'm seeing in kids. And that's it, really, that's the whole thing. And I found again and again that young adult readers tend to be some of the most perceptive, open, inclusive, and wide ranging of readers that read across genres, that read. I just think it's a great place to write in because I'm constantly amazed by the people, the kids that read YA, everybody that reads YA.
Sure. No, I think that's a very fair answer because I read a lot of adult stuff too. I'll put that in, posts, but it's sort of, sometimes you feel like you're reading about a different world than you're living in, and then you read something like this and it's really very refreshing. But I want to ask you too, you have an incredible online presence and you have a voice that you're really not afraid to use for, social causes where some authors are afraid, if I say this or if I say that, I might offend a reader, they might not buy a book. You have opinions, you share them. And I'm wondering if you can talk about, how you balance that platform with the business aspect of things versus the things that you really feel a responsibility to speak out about.
I don't balance it. I just do it. I mean, I always have. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm from Philly. Like, I just don't have any.
That explains.
I don't think I have any kind of I just do whatever seems right. And I've always figured that if you have any, I never really thought much about social, way back, like in the prehistoric era of first writing YA and first, everyone's like, social media, what is it? And, you know, you put up a picture of yourself holding a book, and everyone was Dracula too. I don't know, I just talked about stuff and I never thought about not doing it. And if I get pushback for it, I guess I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't. What are you gonna do? Like, if you, it's not that hard to do. Like, it's really no skin off my nose. It's really fine. Like, I don't think about the thought of not saying something is much weirder to me. So.
Sure, and I think when you know you're on the right side of things too, you know, that makes it a bit easier, but someone has to have a voice, and a lot of people, I think, are just fearful, you know, to say anything, and then it takes people who aren't necessarily fearful to say anything to sort of spur a movement. So I will say kudos to you on that, because I always enjoy, you know, seeing that on your presence. But let me ask you too, you know, there we go.
We all, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the book world right now.
Yeah.
And there's some really gross stuff that's happening. So if no one stands up, then what's the point? Like, it's sort of, I don't know, that's sort of my thought on that.
Sure. Well, that brought that down. Bring it back up now. Fast job.
Was he sleeping? Okay, no, sorry. Oh, my face.
She was pondering on what you were saying. It was very deep discussion for a few moments.
Such a muppet, just like a whole little. Oh, so cute. I'm sorry. I looked at her, I looked at Clover again, my heart.
What you saw, like that lifted her right up.
Like dogs in a way that's. No, it is very healthy. I don't apologize for anything. I'm the person that, if you're at the airport with your dog, you're just sitting there and all of a sudden.
She's the one that just shows up in pictures.
Oh, I see. And I'm already in there.
You're the person when people get home and they look at their vacation photos, they're like, who is that?
It's my dog.
Then they're like, oh wait, it's Maureen Johnson.
Why is she in all the pictures?
So I can totally talk to you all night, but I'm not going to, because I know that you all have questions. So two more quick things. Quick things. Like last time we spoke, I know that you're sort of really leery in giving advice, because honestly, one size does not fit all when it comes to giving advice in terms of a creative or a writing life. But for people, you know, out here in your audience tonight who might be thinking that they want to live a creative life, whatever that is, and it doesn't need to be writing, like, you know, it can be like picture art, like chalk on a sidewalk. But what would you say in terms of, you know, having the confidence to live a fulfilling or freeing life through the arts?
I think people are too afraid of messing up, and that people don't have enough appreciation and love for the wonderful art of messing up, and how much messing up is a part of doing whatever it is that you want to do. Messing up is great. Messing up, doing things badly is entirely part of doing anything at all. You know, when you write anything, you don't just sit down and write it well. You write badly. You write when you start writing in general, you write badly. When you start writing any book, any project, any story, you write it badly. So if you are writing badly, you are doing a great job, and you should applaud yourself and be like, I wrote badly today. Yes, nailed it. Because it truly is part of the job. It's not true. And I think that people do think that somehow writing is different, where you sit down and you just do it great. You just do this amazing job, and you don't just write a whole bunch of hot nonsense. Writing a bunch of hot nonsense is the job. And messing up and trying things out and really getting messy with things is wonderful and great. And things don't have to like look good all the time or sound good all the time. Make strange noises and make strange drawings and write strange words down. That's all part of it. And nothing has to look perfect. That's why I'm terrible at Instagram. I'm like, I always want to have an Instagram. I always want to change my Instagram account to like really bad, like home influencing. I had an illness where I was sort of in the house for several years. And I wanted to change my entire Instagram to just home hacks or like influencer of like how many remote controls can I get in my underwear? So I can like use your bra to carry pens. Or, just how many things can you carry in a bucket next to the sofa? Like, but that was a lot of it. Like it was, I was like, how many bathrobes can you wear at once? And then other people are very beautiful. That's good too. I'm glad that you're looking so nice. Just being happy. Do whatever you want, but also embrace your garbagey self.
Well, I feel better about myself. Like, so like, make a mess, that's art. I feel like I am an artist every day. I make a mess.
It is
Owning it.
like just,
Artist.
yeah, just like get your ink on stuff and mess up your room and have your books out of order and screw up your pages and dog-ear them and don't worry about it.
I really hope my wife is gonna watch this. I feel like this is a really big defensive. Alright, so last question, I mean, people are gonna read this book very, very quickly. And I guess the ironic thing is it takes a lot of effort to make a book like this, and then we read it in like a day and we say, so what's next? And now I ask you, so what's next? Because I heard that there's more Stevie books, but I
Yes.
heard that there's also a completely different book. So there's
Yes, there's
a lot to
one.
look forward to.
So the next book that I'm doing is going to be a non-Stevie, completely different standalone mystery, which will come out next year. And then directly after that, 2 more Stevies. That's it. And the next book, it has a title, it's called Death at Morning House, and it will be out next year. And it is a complete different standalone mystery novel.
Fabulous, much to look forward to. Okay, questions from all of you, because I know that you're making me liar. You're making me a liar.
Right.
Did you say that there's gonna be 2 more Stevie books?
Yes.
And that's it?
There's definitely going to be 2 more. Whether or not
Some people got very worried.
I don't know the answer, but I can tell you there's definitely going to be 2 more. Like they are definite. They exist contractually and they exist on a giant like board that I have of I'm gonna tell another Holly Black story because Holly Black really is like the house of plots and everything that Holly likes to do this thing where you know Holly, Cool Prince, Soul Air, best at everything, elf ears. She does have elf ears. I don't know if you know that. She had her ears modified so that they are elf ears. She lives entire elf lifestyle, 24/7. She is the real deal. But I was at her house and she said, "Do you want to talk plots?" Because she always does. She's like, "If I talk your plot, I don't have to write my book." And so she has a big old dining room table and she hooked up a roll of butcher paper. And so she pulls a sheet, and so she has a little kid, so that was so he could draw on it, but at the same time, she can also plot on it. So she rolled a big old sheet of butcher paper. And then we made this giant chart, and I talked through like in a giant therapy session, like everything I was thinking for all the characters, for all the books. And so I have all of their personal plot lines on a giant sheet of paper, which she then folded up and gave to me, that I transferred to a smaller piece of paper. Because that other one is 8 feet long. So their character lines, the locations, the base, it's up. Those 2 are happening. What happens beyond that, I do not know yet.
Other questions? Yes.
Are there any, we're all getting into spoilers either for this book or future books, are there any sort of classic detective mystery tropes that you're interested in exploring that you haven't explored yet?
I have a very strong interest, always have, in cults. And things that could possibly be considered a cult, and any kind of mentality that leads itself into that kind of thing. So that may play something into it. Truly unexplained disappearances. Ooh, the next one, but that the Morning House, I can't really say because it's but we will be seeing a house on an island. But there's more to it than that, but it's
If you want to sign up to be in Maureen's call, I think there's gonna be.
I don't know about you, I love reading about them. Like I always have, I'm always like, yes, please. But I'm just interested in any kind of like I'm also looking for the right commune. 2023 may be my year. What you got going on? What's happening? Look, as long as you're not violent, you're basically good to everyone. I'm listening. Do I get to wear a robe?
Other questions? Oh, yes. over
Hi.
here.
Sorry, I was late. I was the person walking through. I'm an hour away. So
Oh,
forgive me.
okay. Walking through.
Give me, I'm an hour away. But I just wanted to say that I was never like a big reader as a kid, and just because of my eyes, like reading was always difficult. So book publishing, I actually worked in book publishing, getting into that got me into reading again. I worked for HarperCollins actually for 5 years, so great company. And I worked in children's, and I saw the book on my friend's shelf who was working on Truly Devious, and I said, wow, this sounds amazing. And flew through the book and would, bite away at time and wait till the next book came out. And it was just so good. And I think something in working in marketing now, seeing Stevie's character and seeing someone who's high performing anxiety, who kind of has her internal demons, but then just cannot ever put her work down, and knowing like that's kind of something I struggle with now, is not knowing when to turn it off. And I just love seeing that. So she's definitely my favorite character because I can kind of align with things that she's gone through. But I was curious if you have a side character, not necessarily one of the main ones that we see in every book, but one that's a kind of a smaller character without giving away for people who might not have read all of them yet. That was something that a character you really loved writing.
Who's not in all of them?
I don't think we would die.
Let me think. Jermaine, that's not in all of them. Hunter's not in all of them. But what was it?
You're talking about our favorite character is like Hugh. Library.
Oh, right, of course. Sorry, I had to think about that. There's security Larry.
Oh, yeah.
There's Security Larry. He was based on, I think it was like on our honeymoon. They were like, included with your honeymoon package is a communal dinner. And we're like, ugh. I don't want to go, but they keep showing up at our door like, hello, communal dinner. Let's go. And they're like, we're gonna give you something special. And we're like, all right, they're gonna give us a cake. So we went to the communal dinner, and we were seated across from a guy that had been the fire examiner. And he just told the story, and he said something when talking about, he's like, I left it because I opened too many doors. I'd seen too many things when I opened doors that I couldn't unsee. And it's something about how he presented himself that became Security Larry. So he was based on a fire official that I met on my honeymoon during communal dinner that we didn't want to go. A different communal dinner, right? This one in 2020, we went back to the same place. We're like, you've returned communal dinner. We're like, we came here to avoid people. Communal dinner, swear to God. So this was February 2020, and we're sitting there and we're like, we were sitting across from a doctor, and he's like, and we're like, oh, are you taking a break? And he goes, people have no idea what's coming. He was right. 3 weeks later. So yes, we got the warning from a doctor, don't go to the communal dinners. We also have a habit of playing board games whenever we go away and we like to go someplace warm. And then when everyone else is like snorkeling, doing things on things that float or jet ski, I don't know. We whip out our German board games, like the giant one for like 9,000 tiles. We had people come over. We played Carcassonne, which has like 40,000 tiles, and it's impossible to explain because this guy comes over and he's like, "What are you playing?" He's on. Is it? It's a German tile-based board game. How do you play? He's won like the Spiele Jahre award, and I don't know, it's One cannot simply explain Carcassonne to the man leaning over your chair and swaying to the generic reggae music that someone is playing on a pipe organ in the background. Probably not a pipe organ. Now I'm now imagining it as a pipe organ. Reggae pipe organ. So anyway, what was the question?
Did that answer?
I don't answer questions. I go on special journeys of my own.
It's a real insight in how we
Right,
push
Clover?
it.
I'm gonna get to pet Clover, by the way. I don't want to be rude, but I just want to make sure. Yeah, that in there. Great. I feel better.
Man, you shouldn't have picked your book. You could have bartered for. You know. Any other questions? Yes.
So as someone who finished the book already, when do you think the next season will come out? Will it come out like next year or the year after the Morning House?
So- Morning House would come out early next year. Then Stevie would either come out like kind of later next year. Or right early, like 25, something like that. I just got a new editor, so I have to sit down with her and be like, hey, let's look at the schedule. Because my beloved editor just retired, like 2 weeks ago. She was like, annoying. So I have a new editor and I get to sit down and introduce this hot mess. No. But I'll work out the schedule, but I believe it'd be early 25.
Oh, no, that's a long time.
It's a long time too. Until it's like almost due and then I'm like, no.
Not so much a question, but wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your own wonderful dog.
I do. My dog is named Dexy. She's a ridiculous goober. She is the best. She's alive. She is a little. We got her when she was 8 weeks old. She's a pet hound. She's a brindley. When she wants to play, or frankly, if she needs to poop, she does something called goober teeth, which is this. And so a lot of times when I'm working, because she's so bouncy, she actually runs like Tigger. She is just energy and joy and goofiness. She's like, hey, hey. And then she stands next to my dad as well. She's gonna goober teeth. I'm like, I'm writing in the middle of it. And when she does the goober teeth, I know that I'm like, I can't write anymore. I gotta walk this one. She's gotta walk, she's gotta poop, she's gotta bark at some people. It's a good time. She likes to go to stores. We do what we call jobs. I said, we're gonna do jobs, and we go and do jobs. And she goes into every store along the block and puts her feet up on the counter and politely takes a treat. I know, that's how I feel too. She's always trying to get into the wine store. They have really good milk. And so every time I'm like running into the wine store. Who is this woman? It's always like running into the wine store at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's my dog. She's the literal best, and every moment I'm with her is the best. I love her so much.
Would you like one more question?
Couple of questions about your next book. Is it Morning MOR
Mhm.
or MOUR? And is it a departure? It almost sounds like it would be an English house mystery, Agatha Christie, you know, the Morning House, either spelling.
It's spelled morning,
Okay.
but
AM.
it's spelled MOR. MORI. I can't spell out loud. I have to see it.
That's okay.
MORNING.
Okay.
I had to actually close my eyes and write it with my hand. I can never say the letters out loud. It's a thing. But it's the morning
I
one.
just wonder how much of a departure it is, like the Stevie type.
It's actually well, it's not Stevie. It falls very much into the same kind of category of book. It's gonna feel a lot like the same wheelhouse, just not with Stevie, but it is and it will also have a past mystery and a present mystery as well.
Uh-huh.
A very dark one, very dark and spooky one.
You know, unlike axe murders in a shed.
That's it. There's a lot of also Britpop in this, so
That is
it's
true.
very.
It balances out nice.
And blur.
Okay, so it's also set in England?
Nope, set in US.
Okay.
This one's gonna be set in US,
All right.
I think. So far, I've built the island. But sometimes I can take the island and I can move it around. Like I built my house and then I built my island, but where I put my island, I'm pretty sure I know where the island is.
And off the coast of Maine, probably. They're always off the coast of Maine.
No, this is probably not gonna be the coast of Maine, although it could be the coast of Maine, but right. It's more in the Thousand Islands region,
Ah, okay.
so it's more,
Mhm.
it's more in that region. But then again, I was like, I might need a seat, like I might need bigger waves, so I was like, I need bigger waves. That's a lot of writing. I spent a lot of time with maps and studying currents and things like that.
You got a lot out of you. You should be up here.
It's still morning.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Maureen and John, for coming.
Thank you so much.